But when you're like that 24/7 for the last 10 years, that's not a good thing. All right. The imbalance is chronic stress leads to persistently elevated cortisol levels. And when those levels stay elevated long enough, you don't go back to normal. You actually you decompensate. You go below normal. And then that's what causes the fatigue and all of those other symptoms. So the consequences of the stress hormone is you get abdominal fat because all of that glucose that your body thought you were going to use to run or fight, you don't use it. So they just store it. Your body just stores it away as fat. All right. You get the insomnia because your body says, hey, you don't need to sleep. You're in danger. Stay up. Hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Something might be coming after you. Get up. You get hypertension because your body is trying to make sure that there's enough pressure going to those muscles. The blood pressure is going toward those muscles, and also adrenaline causes your vessels to constrict. You get these skin issues because your detoxification, your gut is not working well. And when you have skin problems, it usually has its origin in the gut. And let me tell you why. Your gut should eliminate toxins, but if you're not doing that effectively, then you eliminate toxins through your bowel movements, through your kidneys, and the third one is through your skin. So if your gut's not working, your skin is going to start to get rid of those toxins, and that's where you can get acne and melasma and all of these skin issues, eczema. Anytime you have a skin eruption, start looking at your gut. So too much cortisol, you get these chronic stress triggers. High cortisol. When your body is constantly in fight or flight mode, cortisol production remains elevated beyond healthy levels. It also suppresses progesterone. I'm going to show you that in a graphic. Progesterone deficiency symptoms emerge and estrogen dominance develops. So that is the problem. It's a domino effect. Once the stress starts, it starts to screw up everything. That's why we wrote the book, The Stress Connection. It screws up everything. So you have to get to the root of the problem. We have to be able to identify and treat stress. And I want to get this across. It's very hard to manage something that you cannot measure. It's hard to manage your money if you don't measure it, if you don't have a bookkeeper, or you don't keep a ledger in your checkbook. I know nobody has a checkbook anymore, but you have to be able to measure something if you want to manage it. So in order to manage your hormones or manage stress, you have to be able to measure it appropriately. Okay. You just can't measure it any way you feel like it. You have to measure it appropriately. So that's what's so important is, can I manage this if I have the proper measurement? And that's what I'm trying to provide for you, to tell you how important the saliva test is so that you can manage these issues. Now, let me tell you what I learned in medical school. All right. We were taught to identify and treat diseases. Okay. That's, if you have a disease, then you need to go to a conventional doc and have them identify and treat it. I actually love it when a patient has already tried conventional medicine and has been told that everything's normal. That tells me that you have no disease. That means I can start looking at functional problems. So let's just look at cortisol. These are the two diseases of cortisol, or your adrenal gland. Remember, the adrenal gland is what makes the cortisol. So these are the two diseases. You have Cushing's syndrome, and that's when you have all of this glucose, you gain weight, you get this buffalo hump. People who are on steroids for a long time, that is really having too much cortisol. That's what prednisone is. When they talk about being on steroids, is that it causes this glucose to be, it causes what they call a buffalo hump. It causes all these issues that I'm talking about when you have too much cortisol. But it has to be way over here. If anybody has taken statistics, there's something called a standard deviation. So what you see is that you have this optimal level here, And in order for you to be classified as a disease, you have to be 2 standard deviations from normal. All right. And if you have low cortisol, it's called Addison's disease. That's actually what John F. Kennedy had, is Addison's disease. You had very low cortisol and you lose a lot of sodium and potassium and all these. It can be deadly. But that's when you're always all the way over here. Saliva testing and functional medicine, it measures people here and here. Okay, that's why we go to the doctor and they say you're fine, you don't have a disease. They're saying you don't have Cushing's syndrome and you don't have Addison's disease. But what about if you lived your whole life here and now you're living it here, or you're living it here? You feel different. You feel abnormal. You don't feel well because you have moved from here to here. Or even if you're right here or right here, your doctor's going to say your labs are normal. But if you do saliva testing, we look at this and we look at deviations anywhere in this area. All right. So, Rebel, does that make sense? I want to keep explaining this so that you can understand what happens when you go to a doctor and what happens when you go to someone who practices functional medicine. If you don't fit here or here, and this is only 2.5% of the population. This is 2.5%. This is 2.5%. So that means 95% of the population is here. That's that 75 to 90% of people who come to the doctor for stress-related complaints or disorders. Is that clear? I'm going to stay here, and so I can get you to understand why I'm so adamant about this. All right?
I just don't think people understand. See, you can be in the levels, like you can be in the red, you can be in the blue, you can be in the yellow. But if your particular body is off, I mean, I don't know why they go by this scale. Like everybody has to fit in this scale because everybody's different.
Exactly.
So 2 points off might be equal to 10 points off in other people.
Exactly.
You know your body the best. And if you know something's wrong, do your due diligent research. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yeah. And understand what the doctor is telling you. He's only telling you that you don't have this and you don't have that. Okay. That's all the lab test is telling you. It's not telling you anything about where you are here. And that's what functional medicine is all about, is that you don't have a disease, but you're not functioning at this level. You're functioning over here or you're functioning over there. And when we know that, now that we've measured it, now we can manage it. Okay, now we're ready. We know what the problem is. We know what the root cause is. Let's pull up that weed and let's keep going. All right.
We have someone here.
Rika, yeah. We got to kick stress out. Yes, you do. You got to pull up that stress weed. Okay. You got to pull it up from the root. So how does stress impact the whole body? It affects the brain and memory. By chronic stress actually shrinks your brain. Your brain is actually losing volume if you're chronically stressed. That's why it's hard to remember things. That's why it's hard to think. It impairs your memory formation and it reduces cognitive function. That's what people are coming in saying they have brain fog. They say, hey, look, some of the things that I used to could do and they were easy for me, now they're very difficult. That's because they don't have enough cortisol or glucose going to their brain in order to for their brain to function properly. So that's why you have the brain fog. That's why now you go to work and it's a job that you've been doing for 15 years. Now, all of those tasks that used to just be commonplace have become difficult. All right. Now, also, it affects your gut. Stress alters gut bacteria, increases inflammation, and disrupts the normal digestive process. Exactly. We all say, hey, I feel it in my gut. I got queasy in my gut. Hey, I'm nervous. My gut, I'm having diarrhea. Yes, stress affects your digestion and your gut. It affects your skin health. Stress hormones triggers inflammation, worsens conditions like eczema, and accelerates aging. And I told you these two are connected. Skin, inflammation in the gut, whatever. It causes the gut not to be able to eliminate toxins. So it says, okay, let's eliminate it through your skin. And that's why you get the acne. That's why you get the eczema, all of these skin eruptions. It affects reproductive hormones. Stress disrupts menstrual cycle. It disrupts fertility. We just talked about that. It exacerbates PMS and menopause symptoms. And it affects the muscles and joints with persistent tension and inflammation lead to chronic pain and reduced mobility. I'll tell you, and you can look, some of the people listening, if you're going to the doctor and they're telling you everything's fine, more than likely you're complaining of one of these symptoms. And you don't have a disease, but you definitely are not functioning at the optimal level. Hormones in the skin. I actually had a patient, let me tell you this. I had a patient just 2 days ago. She came in because we do something with vitamin C and glutathione to help with skin issues. And she said that all of her problems started when her nephew, who was 26 years old, was hit by a hit and run driver and was killed. And she and her sister, who was the child's mother, so it was my patient's nephew, the patient and the kids, the late child mother, they're sisters. So they're a very close-knit family. And both of them got hyperpigmentation or melasma, which is a hormone problem. It causes this discoloration like this. Both of them got it after that incident with the hit and run. And that just brought to the surface for me that how stress can affect every part of your body, okay, internally and externally. All right, so next slide. The hormone domino effect. So high cortisol leads to chronic stress and it elevates cortisol levels. And that leads to low progesterone. The elevated cortisol suppresses progesterone production. And I'm going to show you that in this next slide where you can really see how this domino effect works. Now, without progesterone, you start to have estrogen dominance. Without progesterone to balance estrogen, symptoms like mood swings, skin issues, and menstrual problems develop. And then also, cortisol blocks thyroid hormone. Hormonal imbalances affect thyroid function, leading to fatigue, weight gain, and metabolic slowdown. So there's two things that control energy, your cortisol and your thyroid. And when you're in survival mode, cortisol, your adrenal gland, shuts off your thyroid hormone. It says, hey, look, we can't have you wasting energy on all this other stuff. We need to control all energy production. So it blocks your thyroid hormone. But here's what it also